It's on.
All right, call to order the meeting of Policy and Review Committee, Monday, January 23rd. In attendance is Jeff Scott, Connor Kurtz, Carol Bites, Mike Wolf, Mr. Potts,
Jim Harris.
Mr. Harris, Rob Hurley, and an esteemed member of the public is here with us tonight. Reading Eagle. All right, sort of public.
Sort of.
Pledge of allegiance.
Are we really? All right, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, a couple of quick things. One, we're going to cut short tonight. I guess around 7:10, I think we'll start to shut it down, just so we can get upstairs for a quick session before the voting meeting. And then I just wanted to ask the team if we were to continue the meetings on this day, is that going to be okay with everyone? Yeah? All right. So first thing we have on the agenda is with the old business. I met with Kathy, and there's a few things that some items that were actually approved, but that we had to make some decisions on. So I have them, that'll be the first things. They're marked on the agenda as priorities. So first one, policy 202. That's the foster care. It's a new policy, and there's a piece in here from our old policy on page 2 of that first attachment, if you have it. It says foster students. That section, they're asking us to strike it, and then in lieu of a brand new policy that's coming out that addresses specifically foster students. So that's really the only change to our policy number 202, eligibility for non-resident students. Is everybody okay with that?
Any extra agenda?
No, we didn't print any agendas or any of the hard copies of the policies. I don't have one either, actually. I'm working off my phone.
So they're on Google Drive? I didn't see
Yeah.
it on Google Drive this morning. And I didn't get one email to me. I'm just wondering where it is. Is it out on the drive now?
I can email it to you. I think she sent it out to everybody.
Thank you.
All right, you guys should have it. All right. So the next one, go ahead.
Send it to me.
Oh,
I don't know.
sorry, Jim.
I'm not in the queue.
I just sent it to school board. I guess I better get Mr. Hurley as well.
In terms of the policies we're discussing today, is there a way, Carol mentioned something about Google Drive. Is that where they're posted?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't logged on there in a while. I don't remember my password.
On there, I guess some of them have attachments too, with like, she's been including examples of like legislature and like legal attachments along with it. So like when some of them reference certain code, yeah, she's been including them.
Great.
All right, so the next one is 626. So this is, again, a policy we've already reviewed, but there are certain decisions. If you go to page 2, there's a place where it says, "The district must determine on a case-by-case basis whether the entity receives funds from a district as part of federal funding program serving as the role of subrecipient or contractor." The who, and we have to basically state who is going to be the person responsible for handling that. So they have some options here, like superintendent, business manager, federal programs coordinator, whoever we have. So I think that's probably a question for you, Jim. I don't know how you want to. This is a grant subrecipient monitoring procedure, so,
Currently, Lauren monitors the grants.
okay.
Reporting into him, so be the business manager.
Okay, so. Okay. Everybody good with that? Assume. And then there's an evaluation of risk. So the district shall evaluate each subrecipient's risk of non-compliance with law, regulations, and terms and conditions. And that's also superintendent. Do we want a business manager? Who do you want reviewing that? Same?
Well, him or me.
It's up to you.
I'll do it.
It's going to continue. And then there's also, let's see here. So these are the roles and responsibilities. So audit reports, financial reports, policies and procedures, detailed descriptions of user guides annually, as specified by the legal agreement or contract. So these are the responsibilities that are included in that?
And then it goes
So-
to Lauren.
All right,
That's
that's what I'm saying. So like
That's Lauren.
if you want to handle some aspects of this, then it could be you. Some of them may be,
It's really all Lauren.
all right, so we'll just, all right, so I'm going to change that back. All right, and then monitoring. So this is, the district shall monitor and implementation activities of each subrecipient as necessary to ensure that the subaward is used for authorized purposes. So this is basically making sure.
If that's
We're using it
Lauren, it's
properly.
his office.
All right, so this is definitely Lauren. And then the district shall require subrecipients to develop a corrective action plan to address other identified deficiencies or noncompliance issues. Such a plan shall be submitted to the district. So within 60 days, as soon as possible, as specified by the agreed upon procedure. So,
As soon as possible.
okay. And then record retention.
Me.
All right. That's it for that. And then, let's see, you should put these in here. Sorry, there's even more on this. This is a lot. I think what I'll do is, I'll set up some time to go over this with Lauren.
Okay.
Because I think we're basically going to land there anyway. And rather than waste this team's time, we'll have him go through it if that's all right with you.
That's fine.
All right. 808 Volume 2, 2016. So this is the,
That's what it was.
what's that?
That's what you had, the delegation of responsibility.
No, well, this is specific to be completed at the PSBA request. I'm not sure how this is different. Let me, the food service program. Yeah, this is part of the food service program, compliance to all applicable state and federal laws and regulations, as well as federal guidelines established by the Child Nutrition Division of the United States Department of Agriculture.
There's the warrant. That down at his office. He has all of that.
All right, so I'm just going to assume. District shall use USDA foods for school menus available under the Child Nutrition USDA food programs. Is that an accurate statement?
Question on that though, is that, I know when we switched, there's been some discussions about not following necessarily, like I know the requirements, I don't know if they're USDA requirements or if they're other Washington requirements. They've changed, I don't know, I remember it being in the news when former First Lady had her healthy eating, get fit, it was called Let's Move or something. And there were some complaints about the portion sizes and the nutritional quality of these meals. And I know that some districts have moved away. Is this, am I talking about something different though than the USDA?
No, the USDA is who authorizes the food. What we're talking about is the federal, the reimbursement. If we forego that reimbursement, then we would become pretty much a pay-as-you-go type service. We were looking at that for the high school because our free and reduced numbers aren't as high as, like, say, Pottstown. We're reverse of Pottstown. So our students can afford to spend for meals. So as long as we're not getting those reimbursements, we don't have to follow those guidelines. So the portions go away, how the food is prepared goes away. We become like a Chipotle or a Subway.
But switching to that, this change in policy wouldn't affect that at all, right?
No.
Just making sure.
This just means that we're not growing our own food in the back somewhere.
Okay. Do we ever, like I know this might sound silly, but I know we have gardens.
We cannot serve
Okay.
our food.
And we don't.
We don't.
Okay.
We may do a garden club where they may make a salad, but that's not to offset the cost of buying tomatoes for our food program. And once again, for us, it's a contracted service, so we don't even do it.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions on that? That was all it was. Now, there's a note on here, and again, I don't know, this is from a previous agenda, but, and maybe Carol, you can help on this, is we're waiting, goes back to March. We're waiting for suggestions from the administration to develop a grant disbursement policy.
We talked about that. In the language of the grants, it tells how it's dispersed, and Lauren audits that. So it's not like we get $100,000 and we could use it however we want. Say the health and wellness grant that Shelley gets. She puts things in place for that the money is allocated towards. I don't know what happened with the treadmill upstairs years ago, but moving forward, everything that's put in, it's just like our Safe Schools grant we put in that Rob submitted. We had to submit it for an item. When we did it for equipment, which is $30,000 worth of walkie-talkies, we had a $24,000 grant, so that money is going to go toward that. So the grants are audited and managed that way. So there's no disbursement policy needed because of how the grant is submitted and how we have to spend that money. We can't go spend the Safe Schools grant on windows now because we have to report back that we purchased it for. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, in the previous thing in that long one that we were reviewing, you had identified Lauren as the.
Yeah, there are a number of audit, and also.
Because there's audit, there's follow-up, there's guidelines, all
Yeah.
that is under Lauren.
And it's put in specific funds, so those numbers are used to track where the money is going.
All right.
At times, the only time we would have really extra money, one of the few times would be if we were going to purchase the radios and we can get it for $20,000. And we asked for, and it's a $30,000 grant, we would have money left over then. That's what happens a lot of times with Shelley. She goes for things and then we end up getting it cheaper than anticipated. So then we would have extra money. And usually that money is put towards something related towards that thing.
Trying to remember what the loose end was on that. We did have discussion on that.
It was probably the treadmill upstairs. It was like, how was that purchased? That was
Prevent
purchased
that.
through, yeah.
I mean, I remember in our own full board meetings, we had long discussions around how grant money was going to be used and whether or not it was used appropriately.
Yeah, it's always allocated towards something, but sometimes those things come in below what is estimated.
I mean, as long as there's somebody who's designated as responsible for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming Lauren's aware that he's responsible for that. Grant money comes
Yeah,
in.
he does, because the person who, the grant recipient is the one usually managing the grant, because they're the ones who wrote the grant, and that's where the money's allocated towards.
Is it an audit, or
It's
is it money
audited
that
also.
you have, like a report you have to fill out and send back saying, here, this is what we got, this is what we spent it on?
I think it varies per grant, but generally, like for the Safe Schools grant, we had to say what we were going to use the money for and what the cost was. So we got $24,000 for an anticipated $30,000 cost. We already had the $30,000 budgeted for the radios. Now you're going to pay $6,000 for, and then we cut a PO, and that's cut against the fund that Lauren puts the money into, so he could track based on the tracking system that's in place to track where that fund came from this. And also some salaries are also tied to certain grants.
I'll give you an example, guys. Probably one of our biggest grants comes from federal program, maybe about $360,000. That is audited directly from the federal government. They send someone out and they look at how each dollar is spent on that cost during that program. So we get an outside auditor. We don't have the wellness grants, the food store, that's a local line grant. But the bigger the grant, then it tends to be more scrutiny and those things.
We also had great grant writing from the athletic boosters. They wrote the grants, we got the equipment, so same sort of thing, that money goes to the equipment. If there's $100,000 or $30,000 or $40,000, I think it was a $30,000 grant we got from that. If we find the equipment and we end up spending $26,000, if something's going on, they say, hey, I have $6,000 left in the grant, it falls under that, under the qualifications for that grant, so we can spend it towards it. But then they have to report back that, in the end, they spent X amount of dollars, and this is what they spent it on. There's always some sort of audit.
I mean, Carol, if you come across something, let me know. We can bring it up again. Because other than,
Heads on that.
Kathy said she had it on notes from a previous agenda, so she didn't have anything more specific than that. But, I mean, you
Want
know,
to just leave it at one more meeting and let me double check my notes?
Sure.
Okay.
all right, so policy 011, this is a new policy. So I don't know if you want to go through this or not, but basically it's, school boards are committed to providing every student the opportunity to grow and achieve the actions taken by a school board. So this is basically a general set of guidelines for us. Call it a mission statement or a guiding principles for school boards. Do you want to go through these? Is everybody?
Well, I remember the discussion when this came up.
Yeah, we
before,
talked about this before.
Right, at length, and it says on here the idea was that we could have it as a resolution or board statement. Like, I don't really think it necessarily belongs in the policy manual. And
I think that was the discussion was, do we even want to call this a policy or do we want to call it, like, take it out of officially as a policy and just have it stated somewhere else as like our guiding principles?
If I recall, this was one that, in the review from PSBA, they sent that back in addition. We might have had 10, and they sent back 11. That was my memory of it.
Right.
That they decided this.
This had come up, though, I mean, this was maybe a few years before that, but it seems like something they're continuously kind of pushing.
Yeah, it sounded more like a mission statement.
Right.
Necessarily a policy.
So we just have to basically determine what we want to do with it. Do we want to,
Call it what we want.
like, one, are we comfortable with it as it's written? And then if we are, then do we want to take it out of policies and just call it guiding principles for the school board or, something else?
I guess it needs to be adopted as a resolution, if the board is going to, and again, it is just like a mission statement, though. There isn't necessarily a penalty if we're not doing anything on there, other than I guess there could be some consternation. Some board members could say, you're not following the procedure with members of the public. Before taking any action today, though, I'd like just to look over it again, maybe next meeting if we want to take some action on it, but I
All
just
right.
don't think it belongs in the manual.
So let's just be clear, the decision is, one, we feel like we're going to remove it from policy.
Or just leave it, it's not in there now.
Well, remove it from potentially being part of policy.
Don't
Like,
consider
just
it.
not exclude it from policy,
Okay, yeah.
whether it's there or not, right? Then two, are we comfortable with how it's written?
That's the one thing I want to, because I know when I read it the first time, we were talking about maybe incorporating it into policy, there were some things that didn't quite seem right to me. They were minor concerns, I think, for the most part, but I'd like an opportunity just to review it again before.
All right, and then I guess the third thing in my mind is, where would we keep this? Like, I'm assuming we're going to put this on the website, on the school board page. Does it become our new, like, opening page when you,
I think
or is there a link that says guiding principles?
that's more what you do. I don't know, it depends what the goal is, I'd say.
I mean, I think what we discussed was, what are we holding ourselves accountable? And what should the public be holding us accountable for?
There should be some benchmarks, you're saying there.
No, not necessarily like measurables, so much as, like an example, set annual goals that are aligned with the comprehensive plan. So like, are we doing that? I mean, that's very general.
Right.
Like, so, are we failing at that? I don't know if there's anything glaring.
Things like that, like we should, like I can only imagine some member of the public coming up, like I may have done this when I was a kid. Well, what are your annual goals? Well, your policy says, or your guiding principles say you need to have annual goals. Well, what are they?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know how we respond to that. Like, I feel like we should have answers, like we should, you know what I mean? Like, would you clarify some of those things?
Well, I mean, the ones that stand out to me are the first three.
What are those?
Engage the community by seeking input, building support networks, and generating action. I mean, outside of our, I feel like that's more like proactive versus just sitting here and having them talk at our meetings. And then the second one is champion public education by engaging members of local, state, and federal legislative bodies. And again, is that engaging speaks to me says we're doing that as part of our process, is reaching out. And I think there's some of that, but, and again, I'm not saying that,
Well, even that language, that's very politically worded to me. It sounds like
Yeah.
something PASBO would put out, that you need to be champions for public
It is, right?
education.
that's what, it is what they put out.
Right, I know, and like things like that, I mean, does that mean we have?
This is like in the handout when you go to
No.
school board
Right.
training.
Like things like that, I just don't know if I philosophically agree with, but I guess it's neither here nor there. But some of them, I don't know how you really, like, how do you prove that a board is being proactive like that? Like, it's all to me just kind of ethereal, and the more we're going through it, the more I think that maybe we just shouldn't really do anything with it. But,
I'm wondering the same thing.
Anybody
That
else?
was my feeling when it first came out.
Yeah.
It's just so esoteric.
Mhm.
What do we, what do you have, what do you send this back to us for? Because it just sounded like political fluff, but
All right, so then,
that just.
I don't disagree with you, but I
I don't get a vote. I'm here in my ex officio capacity. I don't have a vote on what you do.
well, I mean, it's still good to have, you can certainly weigh in. I mean, again, to me, it's, do I need to? All right, enough of that. If we don't want it, the way it sounds like the way it's written even, like, okay, I'm not necessarily sold on how it's written. Do we want anything? Do we want something similar that we create, or do we just,
Do you need it?
I don't think we need, no, it's just a different, brand new policy.
I mean, we can, truth be told, we can scrap it right now and
I'm
not
going to
move.
say let's just scrap, because if we want to change it, then that's going to require some
All right.
time. Let's just focus energy elsewhere and have.
I just write all these beautifully articulate notes on what to do, and now I'm just going to put a big X across it. We're scrapping it. Is that clear enough?
That's good.
We're not doing that. All right. Easy enough. I should have led with, do we want anything like this at all?
There we go, yeah.
My fault, lesson learned. I'll be more efficient next time. Teleconferencing,
That was the whole definition of voting meeting. They wanted to kick back the policy for discussion again to define voting meeting.
All right. So I guess the only thing in here in definitions is meeting and then communication device. I think we're comfortable with communication device. Meeting was any public meeting of the board at which discussion and/or official action takes place. Special work sessions and committee meetings are not included.
Yeah, we look at it, or I look at it as there's one voting meeting a month. You know, regardless if we have special voting meeting, we always have one scheduled voting meeting a month. So, but in effect, the board we advertise all meetings as true voting meetings. So we could vote at the committee of the whole if someone chose to bring something from the floor that was on the committee of the whole, you could bring that forward for a vote, but it's not what we define as a voting meeting, which I think there's 11 a year. That's how we looked at it, but that definition was never really clarified in there.
The only thing it says in here is it's a public meeting.
Says in where?
Definitions of meeting. It says,
But doesn't somewhere in there say a voting meeting?
I think we should scratch the word voting.
Well-
Under guidelines, it says regularly scheduled voting. Participation in meetings via communication device may not exceed a majority of all regularly scheduled voting meetings in a calendar year for any board member.
Yeah, so
That's the one we adopted and it's out there in
I'm
board
sorry.
docs.
Yeah.
yeah, that, in the definitions, it just calls a meeting any public meeting of the school board in which discussion and/or official actions take place, and that any special working sessions and committee meetings are not included.
I think we're all in agreement that we want it to be based on all our meetings. I think that we should just remove that word voting, and I think that gets us to where we all want to be.
So that would include committee of the whole and voting meeting.
Well, in
Any
terms
officially-
of minimizing ambiguity there, does it say specifically in the policy that committee meetings will not count toward
Yes,
the limit?
he said other meetings or committee meetings.
Special work sessions and committee meetings are not included,
Well-
according to, as it's written right now.
The thing about, so committee of the whole is technically a committee meeting, like, by definition. It says-
Well, but this is public. It's basically saying that anything non-public, like executive session,
How about full board?
Or-
Oh, one
meetings of
second.
the full-
How about either just committee of the whole and voting meeting? or-
like, we don't even have to talk about how it's worded, just what do we want? Like, what, I mean, like, we don't want voting meeting called out, so then, if we're taking out voting meeting, participation in meetings, which is, vote,
Regularly scheduled.
yeah, we're striking voting meetings.
It says regularly scheduled, so they're the ones that we advertise at the start of the year, which would only be the committee of the whole and the voting.
Well, we regularly schedule committee meetings, they're on the calendar as well, they're public. So the question is, do we want to include those, or don't we?
No, I don't think you should.
Regularly
Committee.
scheduled meetings of the full board.
Yeah, I mean, we accomplish, I think, what we want just by striking voting. And, I mean,
Or wait, or
Well, the reason I say I'm not sure if we do is because we later in the policy specifically say that committee meetings are exempt. And committee of the whole is a committee meeting. Just the members of the committee is the full board. So I think if you just say, if you just strike voting, replace it with meetings of the full board. Or not even, it's just say voting meetings and board committee of the whole, or voting meetings and committee of the whole meetings. That way, that's clear that those are the two types of meetings they're referring to.
all right, so,
And that would preempt.
So if you had a budget meeting,
it's not a regularly scheduled
If
meeting.
it's during your committee of the
Is that
whole
what-
meeting, or during your voting meeting, then it would count. But if it's not committee of the whole or voting, then it wouldn't count.
Maybe that's the way.
Like, the issue, my hang up here is we say committees, like, and we're referring to these types of committees. Like, but we're not referring to committee of the whole, even though committee of the whole is a committee. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that
We're-
in the later section.
we're saying it's only committee of the whole and the full board voting meetings. That's
Yes.
it.
That wouldn't include the budget meetings. They would not count.
It wouldn't include,
But those are the work sessions.
yeah, that's a, and I,
Would it be committee of the
do you want to put in here and,
Just name out this committee of the whole
And the
in our voting meeting.
because I have any public meeting of the full board. But if you want to just, I'll just
Yeah, I would
state,
say committee of the whole and voting meetings, that's clear.
Because
Either-
as Mrs. Spice says, those are the two we advertise throughout the whole school year for our meetings.
Those are the ones regularly scheduled.
Correct.
all right, give me a second to write this down. So, any committee of the whole or board meetings.
That are regularly
Right.
advertised. Regularly advertised, committee of the whole
Or voting.
and board voting meetings.
Regularly
And/or
scheduled.
and
Just name
regularly scheduled. the
Committee of the whole.
And voting meetings. In a calendar.
And
voting meetings. Yeah, there was also some ambiguity there. When does the cycle begin and end? Is it per calendar year?
It says
that-
calendar
It
year.
Does
says
say that?
calendar
And
year.
that's how I've been.
That's a former ambiguity then that we've corrected.
Really?
as far as I don't need to say what's omitted at all. I can just say that's it,
Yeah.
right? I can just delete anything that says what's excluded because it's only what's included is these two meetings.
I mean, yeah, that's.
There's no ambiguity there. This is what's included. Done.
Yeah.
All right. Any regularly scheduled committee of the whole and voting meetings of the board at which discussion and/or official action takes place. Done. That's meetings.
Now, this would.
And then down here-
Folks from calling into committee meetings, right? Is only the limit we're referring to.
Right.
Okay, just to make sure the wording jives there, we're cutting out that line. Jives.
Yeah, it says a majority of the regularly scheduled, so
Okay.
11 months, 22 meetings.
Yeah. That could be it.
You have to be present at over half of them, so.
You know, just throwing out a question. New board member seated, this is the first two meetings, or participates in one of those two meetings right via the telephone, what happens?
The way I've always looked at this, and maybe this isn't right, I don't know, is that you really, up until that half-year point, I mean, theoretically, somebody could miss every meeting from January until, I guess it would be, what, June? And then they could make every other meeting.
We could say, we could
Well,
use
I-
12 months. We don't have to say calendar year. We can just say,
You want it to be a roll?
The reason it kind of popped in my head when I was making that chart
Yeah.
for our attendance, Mr. Potts wasn't seated, for 1 year back from the date we started.
Right.
So I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not making a recommendation, I'm just putting that
well, if you,
seed for thought.
I mean, you make it a rolling 12 months and it takes away, if I didn't start until whatever, then I'm not held accountable to that.
Minimum of 6 months of service, or something like that? Before that would apply to somebody, so as I mentioned,
Well, Jeff is just suggesting that we.
I mean, I read it as, if I'm only eligible for 10 meetings in the year, then that's what I have to be at over half of those. It doesn't say, I mean, I could say, I could add in there for which we're out, for which a board member is eligible to attend.
now, I was.
You're saying if,
That's really, my example is, all right, Mr. Potts, he gets seated last month in December. He's not able to make the voting meeting, he doesn't make the committee of the whole meeting, and then he shows up today. Does he have the ability to, or participate via the phone?
I say yes, because you don't know, I mean, until that calendar year is half up, like, he could continue to call in, and then he could be.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. you
Well,
know,
the
this-
policy does say the board member shall be deemed to be present at,
Right, but it's a participation
So-
in.
but I thought this was, you can't call in for over half the meetings.
You can't vote
You
calling
can't
in,
vote. You
yeah.
can call in for all the meetings after you exceed 50% of participation via
You
the
can't
phone.
vote.
You're just not able
Well,
to
wait,
vote.
here's a question then, because I viewed it that you couldn't call in, nor could you vote. So let's just say I'll use me as an example, why not? Because I'm the one who uses this most often. If I went my 6 months, calling in and voting, I marked present on the form, then I keep calling in, and let's say I'm gone for 4 years, my whole term, I'm not able to come to meetings for whatever reason, I'm still deemed a resident of the district. And it says in the policy that board members who call in are present. That means that you wouldn't be able to remove me from the board.
Well, what it means is, if it's calendar year,
You're
that,
present that's in the context of forming a
Quorum.
Quorum.
quorum, thank you. Because if a quorum's lost, and then you make up the fifth person, then we actually can't continue with the meeting. So
Is
you're
that-
present from the standpoint of from
Achieving
the
a
quorum, but
Okay.
if you're present via the phone and then somebody's sick and they leave, and now there's only 5 and you're on the phone, we don't have, per what I recall in this
Yeah.
policy,
That's what I thought.
we no
So,
longer have a
yeah.
voting meeting.
So then it wouldn't count toward the quorum, that phone.
Yeah.
You have to be physically present for there to exist a
And
quorum.
again, it's my memory. I don't-
well, the other thing is, if you're doing this by calendar year, then in your scenario where someone just calls in for 4 years, they're able to vote every year the first 6 months of the year,
Right, and then they're not.
Right.
like, which seems silly. Right? Like, so, I mean, I don't know if the situation warrants
I don't,
having a whole policy rewritten for it, but
we just leave it as is and leave it for another board at another time to fight over it when they have
oh,
somebody.
thanks.
I don't know, I mean, we've talked about this so much, I think it's best to make it as clear as possible.
Are we good with calendar month, or do you want rolling 12?
I think it should be 12 for your history, right?
Rolling 12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carol?
What exactly do you were going from?
So there's,
Your
rolling 12 just means,
From your
you know,
start
from wherever
date?
your start is, 12 months.
You're going to
Well, not
define
just
that in
from
the
where you
policy
start.
then?
It's just a constant 12 months.
Yes,
That
in the
that
last
chart that's
12
on the,
months.
there's a chart that I have on the website,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it just goes back to December.
Like, if you decide, like, for whatever reason, you start calling in next month,
Right.
and you keep going,
I know what you're
you
saying.
know, the clock starts, the 12 months starts,
Well, within that 12-month frame.
any
you
12-month
can't
frame, you can't call in more than half.
Right, so it'll just keep shifting as time goes on.
It basically keeps you from continuously,
Yeah,
I think it eliminates the
the calendar.
4-year call in
But
forever
that's just a
deal.
rolling, support recognize it's a rolling
Mhm.
thing, so that period shifts like.
It eliminates the whole call in for 4 years.
Right, because as you, like tonight, your average will actually drop after tonight, because you're here, and I think you had a phone in that about a year ago this time.
Yeah,
So one of those would drop, just as a
Okay.
for instance, you know, so your participation will actually drop via phone. So I think just, my opinion, just leave it, maybe I shouldn't have even brought it up, but
Yeah, I think we're
Just-
making it more complicated
yeah,
than
I
it
think
needs to be,
just,
but.
now you identified what the voting, you know, what the meetings that we're talking about and what defines them.
Well, I think the rolling month is, I think the rolling 12 is a good,
As long as you put the definition in the policy
Yeah.
somewhere.
so we're going to go with rolling 12?
Yeah.
All right. We are flying now.
and thank you to Scott Matz, I'm now able to get on the Google Drive.
All right, 113.4, confidentially of special ed students. So this was introduced to the committee on 4/11 with no movement. I don't remember what the issue was with this one. I kept all my physical policies that I had, and I didn't have this one in my pile. So I don't know. At one point, we stopped providing copies of all the policies to everybody. So,
You're talking about 1134?
yeah,
3.4?
yeah, I don't remember.
Want to go on to 116? I'll check my notes.
Mrs. Bites, if I recall, this is one that I think they were waiting for Mrs. Mikowski to review and provide feedback. Or I might be thinking of something else, but I thought this was the case.
It says the notes from Kathy were introduced to committee on 411 with no movement. So I don't know if we just proceed with,
411, so that's in April?
Introduce the committee on
Okay,
416.
like I'm trying to find a copy online, like I don't even know what this policy really is referring to.
well, the challenge is when policies get adopted, the numbers often change. So when you go on our current policy list, if they've been updated, the numbers won't jive with what is on
Is the
these.
current policy though, 113.4, is it a proposed policy?
I think it's proposed, because right now on the site it's locked. So you
Why
can't
don't we
get
just
into
look
it.
at it fresh
Okay.
then?
Yeah, I guess that would be good.
That's along with 116 for students. That's also
I
locked.
have read Word docs like that. We have so many different places now we have to look to get these policies. There's the Drive, there's Word docs, there's PDFs everywhere.
Well, as we move along here, I mean, I'll do my best to make it more convenient for everybody. So if I can get Kathy to, when she sends out the agenda, maybe a link to,
If she could
The
just
Google Docs?
include, I like when they were attachments because it was just
Yeah.
a single email, you just click it, there you go. You know what you have for each meeting. I prefer that.
all right.
Or if she can just maybe include links to the Google, like whatever's easier for all of us to.
I think she's been putting them on Google Docs, and there's one place for them. So she is hoping that we just access them. She only provides me copies because then I have to write on them what we do, and then give them to her so she can update
You know
where we're
what
at.
would do it? Here's an idea. If she can have an email with the agenda, and then each item is a link to the policy we're going to talk about. So just have a hyperlink, and it could be the Google.
I'll ask her. I don't know if that's,
And then you don't have to navigate between PDFs. It's just, oh, we're talking about item 10, and that's policy X.
yeah, I only get the copy because she has to print them out.
Right.
So
I have the cross-reference here. I don't know if everybody got this or not. I think at one point Kathy and I talked about making sure everybody had a cross-reference. But it says for 113.4 that it's a new policy and that the policy has been written in accordance with state and federal law and regulation. There's no old policy reference.
yeah, it's not replacing or,
So, right, it's not replacing anything. Kind of like a fresh start, I guess, Bill.
all right.
We just want to make sure it's okay with our special ed department before we,
Yeah,
All right, so just,
I don't know why, but I thought that's where we kind of left that one, is that Shelley was going to take a look at it, because it could say a whole lot of things, but if a policy is to state what you're doing, so we want to make sure that before we
Yeah.
adopt a policy, if it really is what we're
and the
doing.
department should know if it's a new policy, what the policy says.
all right,
So it's a good way for them to know.
so we'll pass it on.
I have something though while we're on that, and talking about accessing these policies or accessing them. I'm looking on the policies and guidelines section of the website here, and we're in that transition where some of the policies are all big blocks of PDF and others linked to board docs. And it lists here, and this is what Mr. Potts was referencing earlier, 113.4 and 116. They're listed, but they're not linked to because they haven't been approved yet.
Right.
I don't think we should include them at all right there on that, because this is a list of the policies, and although there isn't a hyperlink, if I'm just a casual user of the website, somebody who's not engaged in this committee, I see policy 113.4, and it's listed on the district policy page, even though there's not a document attached to it, and I'd assume that it's an approved policy.
It's not, that, they only get for documents, and once they're approved.
Well, no, it's listed, like, it shouldn't be listed, even the title here on this website, on the public
Oh.
website.
It is.
It's
I see
listed,
that,
yeah.
Even though it has, it's not
Right,
an
it's
approved
not a
policy.
policy. So it should just not be included there
That's a
until it's
mistake.
approved.
That's a mistake.
You understand what I'm saying? Maybe I'm
Yeah,
not.
I wouldn't even know how.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
I shouldn't
exactly.
even went that far.
I literally have not seen that. that if it's not an approved policy, and it's a brand new policy, it's not usually out there at all.
Right.
All right.
That might just be
There's a bunch
administrative
on there.
error.
Do you have any other examples?
Oh, well, there's, if you scroll down through under the 200s, there's a ton of them, unless we're just locked out for some reason.
No, for these, I think, these are ones that you have to click on the 200 thing up top, and it brings up all of them combined. But those, I believe, are all at least active policies.
Those are the current ones.
Right, current, and as opposed to 113 and 116, which are proposed at this point.
Right, is it under new business, there, it's two, policy starts at 207 through 251. So like.
Yeah, so I talked to her about putting on here tagging anything that's new, meaning we had no policy relating to this topic. We can, if that helps, like when you look at the agenda, if you go down to new business, she has them tagged as previously this policy, and if anything that says new means it's completely, we have nothing on this topic in our current list of policies.
That's helpful. I like how she.
So, again, this can be improved. She's very open to doing it, whatever is easiest. I just thought being able to look at this at a glance and kind of know where we stand on some of these is helpful.
No, I did just cross-reference when we were talking here, a few of those, and those 200 series policies are listed as new. Those aren't listed on the website. So we're good there. It's only in the 100s where the proposed policies are named but not.
All right, so I'll ask about that. I don't know if, because she typically, when she gets them and they're finally okayed, PASBA has to review and say, okay, and then we put them on our site.
But that's something to get them on board docs, right? Like PASBA doesn't rubber stamp what we pass.
No, we have to let them know, I guess, that
Is ready to go live.
we're ready to go live.
Okay, on Word docs, and so they maintain Word docs. And, okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Is that your understanding, Carol?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get out.
No,
For my site.
so when the full board goes through second reading and says okay, then she forwards the final version off to
Yep.
PASBA,
Yep.
who then gets it on
and then
board docs. And
That's the conversion.
And apparently, they're backlogged pretty substantially right now, so she said there's a bunch of them that we've approved and they haven't been updated.
And then they're supposed to pull the ones that it replaced.
Yes.
Is that though because a lot of districts around the country use Word docs, but I don't think they rely on a third party to maintain it. Like, why can't we?
That's part of our service
Oh, so they're
right
just,
now. And I
okay.
think they're working with Mr. Matz on it.
But once our
It's
service
part of their
ends.
our policy review service that we pay for.
Okay, right, so when that service comes to an end,
Then
we'll
we're
take
on
it
our
in-house.
own.
Okay. Well, then one thing that for her to be extra careful about, because I know this has happened to me when I chaired this committee at least, with all the revisions we talk about here, there's a lot of moving pieces. The approved version of the policy from this committee needs to go to the board, and it needs to be consistent. And then when the board approves it, like, it needs to be that policy that's sent to PASBA, not an old version, or, like, they need to be the same files. I mean, that's.
Well, and that's what-
obvious, but,
So any changes, like even if if we go to a second reading,
yeah.
that's supposed to cover any edits that we would have made in the first reading.
Right.
So assuming the second reading is supposed to be basically the final, like everyone should be looking at them going, yeah, we talked about this before, it's good. And then she assumes that, assuming there's no changes from there, she takes that second reading document and sends it.
I just want to make sure that we don't talk about all of these changes we want to make and then rule a mistake or an incorrect file is sent. The PASBA proposed policy ends up on our website instead of the Daniel Boone School Board edited, approved PASBA policy. So just so we can be careful to make sure that the right files are being transmitted. I had issues with that in the past. That's sad.
I mean, I guess we wouldn't know until we get it back on board docs to see
Yeah,
if
and
it's.
I don't want this on board docs, like, I'm not going through and looking. I don't know if there's anybody, like, as long as we double check, like, PASBA puts the right thing up even. Like, what if PASBA puts up the wrong version? I don't know. Like, I just want to make sure there's a check there.
I will ask. Is that something
That's a
you're,
good point.
is that something you're offering to do?
I mean, I just think that.
I think it's a great idea.
Kathy is the one who knows what the board approved, and maybe as soon as PASBA, she'd see them from PASBA, hey, Mrs. McNeely, your policies have been outdated, thank you, PSBA. Well, then she should just go and say, all right, well, just choose a random edit that we made to our policy and just make sure that it's reflected on what PASBA actually put on our website. Because we talk about so many little changes, it's easy to foresee that, well, somebody's working from this document from 2 meetings ago, somebody's working from this document from last meeting, like there's so many moving,
Could you even tag these that are most recent with some kind of symbol on the site? Just to denote that they are added
I don't know.
On the actual website.
on the
I
actual.
don't know, you might be able to put them in a bold font or
Well,
something.
no, you could do at least on our end, because on the page that we were looking at, where it
Correct.
lists them all, you could mark it however you want. Hey, this policy is a recently.
Well, then if we have one on there that's like in transition, could we just put it in like red and then just say it's
Or
currently under
proposed. I
review?
think that would be a good way to handle these two that we brought up.
Right.
Currently proposed,
All right.
not yet final, or
Or
whatever.
put symbol either in working in progress or added new approved.
That could also be a way for the public to keep track of, like, what policies are currently under discussion. If they want to comment on something, if they go to this page and see that, hey, the policy committee is talking about this topic or this policy, I think that would be
Just give
fine.
a symbol each
All right.
time.
Ask about that.
If the public even cares, I don't know.
I have a suspicion that
They don't.
there hasn't been a visit to that section of the site by the public in a decade.
We'll let you visit when you have an issue.
No, I know. Right. All right. Tutoring, policy number 116. So this one is, again, this is supposed to be an old policy that we had action on a long time ago. Back in 2015. This goes back to. So everything on here is in bold, which means that 100% of it is rewritten or reintroduced from PASBA.
Yeah, but I don't think there are copies of that policy on the drive.
No.
And I don't know that it was introduced to the committee on 11/29 because when I had that meeting, I always had it previous to the committee of the whole. And then we wouldn't have, because of the board reorganization, we wouldn't have one in December. So I don't know, I think that kind of got lost.
Yeah, if we could get copies, like I know we talked about these back in, like just with the,
Is this not in Google Drive?
I can't find it. I've looked for the last few.
Oh, it's not on the current version?
No. Like I can't talk about it unless
All right.
here. So if she could just add, like if there's any policy that's on the agenda, if she could just put it in that meeting file, so it's all there, like just a way so we're not clicking off, like, because I don't have that, I can't access it, it's not on Board Docs, it's not on the drive. The only way I'd have it is if I kept it from last, whenever it was, January or whenever we talked about it.
All right. I mean, short of me just reading it to everybody, is it long? No.
Oh, well,
It's, a page and a,
it's kind of long.
most of them are like, some of them are 5, 6 pages. I mean, it talks about excusal from school, private tutoring, and excusal from school and private tutoring.
Can you just pass it, or if there's something I remember from it?
Do you want me to read it?
Or
In
we can just
school
wait till the
tutoring
next meeting
versus
and
out of
look at
school? Yeah, just let it wait. There's
Yeah,
nothing
it's not
urgency
urgent.
on it.
No, I mean, it's just on old business. It's an old, like, we're supposed to be through the 100s.
Yeah, so we need to.
That's why That's why it's on there as a,
It'd be nice to get them done as soon as possible, but like there's that one, and then there's the,
all right, so how about we do this? We'll carry this over to the next meeting, but we'll have it sent out in the meantime so everybody can review it.
right.
All right. So this will be on the agenda for next month, and we'll disposition it then. We'll make a final decision on it then.
Mr. Scott, would it be okay if I'm excused? I do have a ceremony at the high school, and I'd like to come back for the board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay? Just for the record.
Okay. Maybe I should decline, just to shake things up. See if he stays.
Controversial.
Exactly. Will he stay if I say no? All right. So that concludes our old business discussion. So just a quick review of the old business. I'm going to check with those policies that are sort of in limbo. Everybody's okay with us if we can get them like in a different font? Like a different color, like, like any of the policies that are in red are the ones that they don't have a link to them, like you were saying, that
Sure, I mean, just,
like somehow distinguish them so that,
as long as it's clear that they're.
yeah,
they're
like
not
these are
policies, right?
in progress of being reviewed.
It can be something
currently.
as simple as italicized versus regular.
Right, whatever it is, like some type of call out so that people know that when they click on this, it's under review currently.
And when we say under review, I think it would be helpful just to be as clear as possible, say that this isn't the current policy.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't want a parent to come and say, well, it says on your website, but and we say the policy's under review, and the parent's like,
Yeah, this is not a current policy.
Yeah, the current policy is what we have in those PDF formats, like one big long PDF.
not,
That is the official policy until we adopt the replacement policy.
well, yeah, but what about, like, if you go on the website, it's only in the big, long PDF documents, beginning with the 200s. All the 000 policies and 100 policies are on board docs. So they're no longer in the long series. It changes halfway down the page to where it just shows the text files at 200 or text names, and you have to click on the series and you get the big block. But the 000s and 100s, each policy individually, much like it used to, instead of linking those to the individual PDF, it now links to board docs. But I'm just saying that if there's something,
Yeah, what Connor described is correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
As new policies are being approved or individually linking to
what
each
we
one.
had brought up though earlier was that you have two policies on here listed, there's no links to them yet
Okay.
in the 100s that were never approved by the board. So they're on there though as placeholders, I think, until they're approved.
Gotcha.
But what we were talking about, or at least my point was, if I'm a member of the public or a parent or whatever, and I see that those titles are listed, I assume those are policies, and a hyperlink just isn't available. I'm just saying that we need to make clear that those are not.
Like, can we put them in like italics or red and then just,
Yeah.
state that these are under review?
Yeah, easily.
And not, under review
These
and not policy.
These are not approved policies
Right, not approved
Policies,
policies,
yeah.
yeah, that's good.
and are currently being reviewed, something like that. I'll send you, you can tell me what our options are.
All right.
Very good.
All right. One of the policies I'm going to send out to everybody for review for dispositioning next month, and then we're also going to pass on that policy regarding special ed to Shelley. All right, other than that, all right. New business. Get these bad boys out.
Is this a whole new batch from PASPA?
They're varying, so some of them, these are, so these have not been previously reviewed by us, is that what you're asking? These are backlogged, like, yeah, meaning we haven't reviewed them.
Right.
Some are brand new to us, and some are revisions of existing policies, which they're called out here. All right. So we'll just start at the top. Confidential communications of students. This is previously policy 214.1.
One second. But it's now policy, proposed policy 207. I can share mine. Okay, got the file.
All right.
do you have the cross-reference to tell us what the difference is?
They're listed.
Well, the only changes are in bold.
Ah,
Oh, there they are.
very good,
Okay.
yeah. So in qualifying circumstances, just looking for delegation of responsibility, maybe we should have in qualifying circumstances, the building principal or his designate. Like what if it's, according to this here, a vice principal cannot reveal confidential information?
I'm sorry, where are you? You're in delegation of responsibilities?
Yeah, I'm in delegation of responsibility.
Okay. I
I'm
mean,
wondering,
how do you define the delegate, though? I guess, like,
Somebody who the principal authorizes to share that information, I'd say. Just because here, like, it excludes everybody but the building principal from revealing, unless we want to do that. Maybe we should. There has to be some accountability there in terms of giving out that information. But the way I'm reading this final section here, in qualifying circumstances, the building principal may reveal confidential information. And it doesn't say the building principal or anybody else. It's very clear that it's only the building principal. So maybe, yeah, maybe Jim has,
I mean,
not even the superintendent.
how are we defining delegate, like
Designate.
designate?
Anybody who principal says, I designate you.
Well, or is it just if the principal's not there?
It could be that too. It depends what we want.
Like, I would suggest that it's the principal whenever possible, and that in the event that the principal's not there that day, that someone, whoever's in charge
Yeah.
is.
Well, what about even the superintendent? And here it doesn't say that the
The-
superintendent is able to give up that information to anybody. That the only person who can is that student's principal. You see what I'm saying?
Well, generally, the principal will make the communication with the students, but the only other person I can think of would be the school nurse. Because we do keep separate files between academic and the
Can you see the
nursing.
attachments?
I see the codes and all that.
So that's where it gets into like what the confidential definitions.
The principal might be the only one who would be able to do that. Which, if that's the case, we need to make sure that our procedures follow that. But the only reason I'm saying that is should we be tying our hands in policy if we don't have to? Unless, I mean, I can see though, part of me thinks that also there should be a single person responsible. So if confidential information is given out that shouldn't be, then somebody should be able to be held accountable for that. And there should be a trail to follow.
I say we follow the guidelines sometimes.
Here we go. Information received in confidence from a student may be revealed to the student's parents or guardians, the principal, or other appropriate authority when the health, welfare, or safety of the student or other persons is clearly in jeopardy. So, I mean, the law, I guess, says that it's other appropriate authorities. I'd say our policy should say something like that. Even though that may introduce some ambiguity for our staff, like who are other authorities?
Well, I mean, in this, it was calling out police or,
I think the word appropriate. you know,
other appropriate authorities.
The key word is appropriate. You wouldn't tell the English teacher,
Right.
you know. That's one of the issues we have with scanning student records. How much of that record is exposed to everyone?
Yeah.
Where the history teacher doesn't need to know their medical records, because that would be part of it. So there's layers there. So it's appropriate is the key word.
Now, this is it does say here, or other appropriate authorities, but I'm wondering, is it, so we're talking about two different things here. I understand, yeah, that's the second part of the sentence here. I'm talking about the first sentence, this first part, excuse me. The law says, or the code says, in qualifying circumstances, the building principal or other authority may reveal confidential information. Now, if we continue reading that section, though, it says, to a student or parent's guardian and other appropriate authorities. So let's say the police were involved for some reason. Our policy says that the only person in the district who can give information to the police, confidential information.
I mean,
is building
the
principal.
Title 42 slide tells you who's excluded. It's the The first attachment, or,
That 22 is the first attachment.
uh,
But I'm looking at 12,
oh, no, this is Title 42.
I haven't gone down to 42. Let's do that.
Title 42 in the very first block, letter A.
Right, I'm looking at that now.
And that basically describes who's not allowed to, unless given consent by someone.
Okay. Okay, it seems interesting here, so I guess it doesn't say principal or anything, so I guess that's why the principal's allowed to give that information out.
I mean, it pretty much says, I mean, that's pretty much everybody.
But, yeah, it doesn't say teachers, and it doesn't say superintendent. But anybody who's not, yeah. What is this down here?
I mean, obviously, the teachers are probably going to often know because they're directly involved in whatever the issue is.
The question here, though, is that.
Because this gets into like,
Yeah.
if there's drugs and alcohol involved, if there's, you know, something that happens inappropriate in class, like, those are all.
Also, though, this is, actually, I don't think that is necessarily what it's about, because it says here, information received in confidence from the student. So if I were to go to my guidance counselor and say something, okay, I don't want anybody to know this, but I just can't stand Jeff Scott. He's the worst chair of the policy committee ever. Don't tell anyone. Because I express that information in confidence, the guidance counselor can't go to my parents and say, well, you never believed what Connor said about Jeff Scott. But they could go to the principal, and if the principal deems it qualifying information that can be shared with the parents, and the principal can tell them. That was probably a pretty bad example, because I ran with it, I don't know.
Apparently, it's not.
No, I don't know, it's just like that principal being the point of contact, and nobody else could be per this policy. And that includes the superintendent. Yeah, so this is, I don't know. I guess that's what Paz was saying, I'm assuming that's how other districts do it and it works, but I just think.
I mean, that's the only thing they really changed.
And there must be a reason they changed it. Either we weren't in compliance with what the code said, or.
Like, I'm guessing that this is not one a policy that we created in the first place, and
Right.
they've just refined what they've already had in
Well,
place.
you know, on this note though, I'm thinking about an example from a few years back. I use that terrible example with you because I can't really think of an example where a student would give confidential information. Mr. Harris, do you have an example of that? Like, what information would a student give in confidence that wouldn't be able to be shared with a parent? Unless this policy, like, I know there was an issue in the school district with abortion discussion guidance council.
Yeah, I mean,
But something like that, or?
Anything of a personal nature that the student may want to harm himself or herself or something.
student says I'm pregnant,
Yeah.
Something like that.
like, student says I have a drug addiction, like,
So if,
I mean, there's a million things. I mean, there's,
I went to a guidance counselor and said, hey, listen, I have a drug addiction. Then that guidance counselor couldn't tell my parents, couldn't tell,
I think that guidance counselor could only tell the principal.
and the principal could be the only one then to communicate. The
Right.
principal-
In other words, the guidance counselor's got to,
Right.
that's confidentiality, you can't see
And
anything.
that's important, I think, because, I mean, you have to have some accountability
Right.
there, like I said. So the principal's
Schools
that
do
person.
layers of investigation. We have more FBI, more investigations done than the FBI most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, this even gets into, you know, like a teacher sees a student with drug paraphernalia, or like they're not allowed to go telling other teachers, like I saw Bobby with,
They have to go and tell. the
they should be
principal.
telling the principal.
Well, no, they can't tell the authority. The principal can, not the teacher. Okay, go.
Right, they would have to report it to the principal, and the principal would then report it to the appropriate authorities and their parents. And,
It sort of enforces the chain of command,
yeah,
basically. That's it. You tell your superior, it's like at Penn State what happened. You have to tell the next person.
So that's the difference here between, well, okay.
like they're not supposed to talk amongst each other.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to tell, you know, like even if I have good intentions, I shouldn't run to the guidance counselor and say, Mary's pregnant and, this is an issue, like, they should be talking to the principal.
Okay, I'm trying to just parse here the difference between that first line under delegation of responsibility and the second, because they're similar in a lot of aspects, but there are some differences. The second one explicitly references parents and guardians.
I think the first one is basically the chain of command, right? Like, I'm a staff member and I know something, I can only tell the principal.
That's what I thought though, but it doesn't say that. It says that they can also tell other appropriate authorities, and I'm wondering who are those appropriate authorities? Are they the police? Are they the superintendent? Are they the immediate supervisor? Are they a vice principal?
Yes,
All of the above?
yes.
Okay,
Think about Penn State,
yeah,
and that's,
okay.
I mean, the principal or the head person should be made aware. However, you can immediately go for help by taking action on to your supervisor, a police officer. It's reportable.
I just noted here, it doesn't say and, so the principal needs to be told.
Yes.
But the people on that who are authorities that are appropriate also need to be told, okay. But not the parent, because only the principal can talk to the parent. Okay. And other
I'm fine with it.
It's just, I want to make sure, because I'm trying to work through this here to make sure that I understand what it is, because if we as members of this committee aren't sure what it necessarily means, I don't think it would be right to tell our staff, hey, you got to follow this policy when there's some ambiguities. I also think that I have a habit of overthinking things, but
What are you talking about?
Is everybody else?
I'm fine with this.
I'm fine.
3 minutes.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. I'm confident that we're not going to get through another one in 3 minutes. All right, if there's not any other questions,